Hey there everyone, my name is Andrew and welcome back to an Unreal Engine 4 tutorial. Last video we were working on creating a simple sprinting system for your game, and as you can see it works alright. You just hold down left shift to sprint and you release it to stop sprinting. And we also added in a small fade transition between the speeds to make it a little bit more smooth. If you haven't watched the last video yet, I'll add a card up on the top right of the video now, or you can go to the end of this video and it'll be one of the videos on the end screen. Today we're making a stamina system, and there is really simple ways to make stamina systems that might work for most games, but we're going to be making a smarter stamina system, one where the player can't exploit it through various different patterns of input. So without further ado, let's get started. Right, so to get started, we're going to go to our third-person character, and if you followed the last video's tutorial, we'll already have all this set up. And we're going to want to create a integer value for our stamina. And now we want to make 3 booleans. The first one we're going to call jumping, question mark. The next one we're going to call stop sprinting on landing, question mark. And the third boolean will be called fell from ledge, question mark. So now we have those, we'll compile it. Now we're going to need to create some space here in our graph for our new code. So I'm going to move our left shift node all the way over to here. In fact, we can just break these links for now, and we can move these over to the side here. Now off pressed and released, we want to get a branch, and we want to get are we jumping with a not boolean and connect it up like that, and then we'll copy and paste that and we can add that for released. From false on our released, we're going to want to get set stop sprinting on landing, and we're going to set that to true. In fact, let's create some more space. Let's tuck this in here in the middle. And now off of, well, we don't need anything off of false for the branch here on press left shift, but on the true, we're going to get another branch. Now this branch here, we're going to check some variables and conditions to make sure that we can't just hold and press the left shift and drain our stamina while standing still. We're going to make it so that your stamina will only get drained if you actually have the intent on moving and are actually moving. So we're going to grab our character movement. From character movement, we're going to get our velocity, and we're going to split this because we can ignore velocity Z, because velocity Z in this case is up and down jumping movement. From X and Y, we're going to get a not equal on both of them, and we're going to want to check to make sure that they're not equal to 0, and we can connect these together with an OR boolean. Next we're going to get our get move forward, which is one of our axis values, which is connected to our movement input that we have on our WASD keys, or perhaps your thumbstick on a controller. And we're going to want to get another not equal to 0, and then we can connect these up with an AND boolean, because we want to have a two-tiered safety system to make sure that we're not draining stamina if we're not actually moving. Always make sure to compile and save your project as you go along so you don't lose anything. And now we're going to have the third and last branch check on our left shift pressed, and this one we're going to have is equal or above to 1 on our stamina. And if true, we can set ourselves to sprinting. This is so then you can't engage into sprinting if you don't have any stamina. From our true node down here on released, we can connect this up to set sprinting to off. And as another safety precaution, we want to get the false from character movement velocity and movement axis float value check. We want to get the false off of that and also put that into our nodes for the stop sprinting. And at this point, your graph should look like this at the moment. And the next thing that we're going to do is add sequences between our set sprints and the timeline, because we want to access new code that we're going to write that will drain or add stamina to our stamina variable without it always feeding through our play and reverse for our timeline. So let's grab 2 sequences, have our first ones connected into the timeline, and then we're going to want to get the code that we use for adding and draining stamina off of the then 1 nodes. So now it's time to make 2 new events, 2 new custom events. We're going to add the first one. Let's call this one remove stamina, and custom event number 2, and you can guess add stamina. Now we won't be able to just call these events like dragging off of here and then typing in, oh, I want to do remove stamina, because doing it that way will only cause it once. Meaning if we have a system where we say, hey, our stamina by default, which should be set to 100 by the way, sorry. If we have our stamina starting at 100, and when we sprint, we want to have that drain over a certain amount of time. If it's losing 10 stamina a second, then that means we're going to have to call this remove stamina custom event 10 times a second. So to achieve that, we're going to use set timers by events, and to hook up the event to the set timer, you use this output delegate and connect it into event. So like I said before, if we want to be losing 1 stamina point every 10th of a second, then let's type in a 10th of a second and make sure that we have it set to looping. So now we can add some code to our remove stamina, and the first thing that we're going to add is just a couple more checks to make sure that we don't have stamina draining when we don't want it to. And the first one that I'm going to get is the character falling or not? Because if the character is not falling, that means that their feet are firmly planted on the ground and they are actually doing the sprinting and they're draining their stamina. So now with that check off of true, we can get stamina decremented from that, which is just going to be -1 of whatever it was before. We can set or reset the stamina, and for testing purposes we can use a print to string. Let's just make that a little bit shorter, and we can add it into our print screen, so while our stamina is draining we can always see the number going up and down in the top left of the screen. One other check that we're going to do is for this character falling bit here, we only want to make it so that the stamina is draining if you have fallen off of a ledge. If, however, you are sprinting and you have jumped in the air whilst you're sprinting, well, that's going to take some effort, obviously. That's taking more effort than just simply falling off of a ledge. So we can add in another check to make it that if you are falling, but you're falling because you jumped, well then it will still continue to lose stamina. But if you've just fallen off of a ledge, then we can temporarily pause the drainage of stamina. This isn't something that you have to do for your game. This is just a gameplay decision that I would recommend. So from the false here, we're going to put that into our jumping branch, and if true, then we're going to revert it back into the code for draining the stamina, and off of false, this is where we can set fell from ledge to true. Now that we've added in some code for our remove stamina, we can compile it and save it. And we want to start adding a little bit of code now for our add stamina before we can do anything else. So from our second sequence, we're going to drag down here. And what do you know? We're going to need another branch. And this is another stamina count check. And what we're checking for is if we are equal or below 99, because we don't want to be adding more stamina if we've already got our stamina value to its maximum of 100. So with true, we can get another set timer by event and connect our output delegates. And depending on the kind of game that you're making, you might want to change these time values here in your timer by event. In this case, I'm going to have a rule that you will gain back your stamina twice as fast as you lose it. Perhaps for your game you might want something like that the other way around, but this is just what I'm using here for this example. And always make sure to make this set to looping. And now we could just simply get our stamina, increment, and set again our stamina, and then for testing purposes we can print a string and connect up the value like that. So now we should have an event graph that looks like this coming off of our left shift input. Now the next part is really essential to making sure that this works, and what we're going to do is set and store variables for our timers so we can reference them, and we can make sure that we can turn off the timers when we need to, because we don't want our stamina to be draining forever, and we don't want to be adding stamina forever. So off of our return values, first we're going to do for remove stamina, we want to right click, promote to variable, and let's call this the remove stamina timer. And off of our add stamina, let's do the same. So now that we have these, we can now do checks to make sure that when we have our remove stamina, so that it has removed enough stamina to the point where it's reached 0, we can then do a clear on our remove stamina timer to stop this. And likewise for the other one, we can do the add stamina here and clear it when it has finished its loop. So we're going to need 4 nodes here. We're going to need 4 of the clear and invalidate timer by handles. Cool, we got 4 of them. And we're going to be using 2 each, like 2 for the remove stamina and 2 on the add stamina. The first one is going to be after we've started our set timer by event for the remove stamina, we're going to make sure that our timer for our add stamina has been turned off. And likewise the other way around, after we have our set timer by event on the add, then we can do the same as before, but the other way around, we are going to stop and invalidate the remove stamina timer. So now the next 2 are just some more checks. So on our remove stamina here, on this bit of code here where we have it removing the stamina, we want to grab a branch, and with our set stamina output node here, we want to get is equal or below 0, because once it's hit 0, we don't want it to keep removing the stamina. So if it's hit that point, then we can stop the remove stamina. And then likewise here, we have our add stamina, and we don't want it to keep adding stamina past 100, so we grab our branch, we get the stamina node, we get is equal or above to 100, and if that has happened, off of true, let's get our clear, and let's clear the add timer once again. So now we should have a graph that looks like this. Compile and save it. And now we need to add one more thing from our remove stamina. We need to add in the event where the stamina has reached 0, like here, and now we want to tell our character, hey, you can't sprint, you don't have any stamina. So we're going to come over here in this gap and make a custom event, and we're going to call it halt sprinting. You could just call it stop sprinting if you want to, and we're going to connect this up to here, and then off of the end of this branch node with the remove stamina timer clear, we want to reference that, call the function, and now when we have the stamina reaching 0, it will automatically fire off our halt sprinting, and it will start the code for stopping the sprinting. We'll go back into walking, and then our stamina will start adding up again. So this is all that we need to do here for this stuff. This is all done. We now have our left shift input completed. But over here on jump, I have left some space here to add some new code, and we're going to do something similar to what I did in one of my earlier videos where we were talking about saving player location. And what this is that we only want to set off some certain bits of code when we have the player landed on the ground. If that code, for some reason, had been fired off while you were up in the air. This is just another fail-safe sort of bit with the code. I know it seems like that this whole video has just been nothing but creating fail-safes for our system, but you will need it and you'll love it for basically the efficiency of your game code. So off of press jump, we're going to get a do once, and then we're going to get our jumping and set that to true. And now we want to get event on landed, which is a nice piece of code where it'll fire off each time your character has landed on the ground after a jump. So we want to set our jumping again and have it to turned off, and we can grab a branch and let's get stop sprinting on landing and get fell from ledge. We want to get our fell from ledge, not that one, we want to make it a not boolean, and then we can connect these two up using an and boolean, and let's connect that to the branch. And if this is true, we're going to need to call the halt sprinting function again, and then these will both basically just go back into the do once reset. But before we do that, we want to make sure that these have been set off again because we have landed. So we connect it into the reset like that, and we want our halt sprinting to do the same, so that can just go into here. And that's pretty much it for the code that relates to the stamina itself, but we are going to need a way to visualize it on the screen, which is why we're going to create a widget. If you are already in the middle of creating your own game, you probably already have a widget set up for your gameplay heads-up display. You're going to want to create this stamina bar that we're making within that. But if you haven't got a widget for that already, then we can just create a new one. I'm just going to call this the stamina widget. And we're going to go in here, let's grab a progress bar. I'm going to anchor it down to the bottom of our screen. Let's make it 600 wide, center that, and let's put it down to the bottom. We have blue as our color, but I think we could use something like yellow. How about that? Compile that. And now we can go on percent on our progress and create a binding. Cast to our third person character, and we can convert this into a pure cast, which will basically make it run faster. If you have a lot of bindings and widgets, you want to make sure that you have your cast set to pure, otherwise it will just completely bog down the CPU time. Let's get player character, and then we want to get our stamina, and because our progress bar only exists in a space where it can understand only between 0 and 1, you can see that, we're going to get our stamina valuable here, which has anywhere between 0 and 100. We're going to divide that by 100. Actually, first, let's convert that into a float and then divide it. Excuse me, I just remembered that this is the better way to do it. Pardon me. And now you have this all set, and this progress bar is receiving the correct information. And then very quickly we go to here on our event graph, and you want to get your event begin play. Let's create our widget. Our owning player is us, obviously. Let's make the class stamina and add to player screen. You could just have add to viewport for here instead if you know it's only going to be a one player game, but I always like to use the add to player screen every now and then, just because it seems to work better if you think that you're going to have more than a one player mode in your game. This way the widget will be created per player. So we can compile and save that, and it's basically done. So let's go test it. So here we are walking about in our level, and at the bottom of the screen we see that we have a stamina bar. I'm just walking about, and if I hold down shift now, we go into our sprint and the bar is depleting down at the bottom. You can even see the numbers at the top left, and we're about to run out of stamina. I'm still holding down shift, and we have gone back into the walk mode, and we replenished our stamina. And now if I release and press again the shift button, we can now sprint again. I can continue to run around, and I can release shift, and anywhere that the stamina is at, releasing the shift button will start to replenish it. And if I am sprinting and continue to sprint and jump, it's still depleting the stamina. But if I sprint up these stairs and I'm still sprinting and we just fall off of a ledge, the stamina drainage pauses momentarily. And also, because of our safety checks, if I just try and hold down, you can hear that I'm pressing down the shift key. If I'm just holding it down while I'm standing still, it won't drain the stamina. And if I try to engage it while I'm in midair, it won't work. So we can see that our safety checks are working. And if I run around and keep running around, and I jump at the moment where, like that. So while I was in midair, we then called the thing to start replenishing the stamina while we were in midair, because the drainage had stopped and had gone down to 0. So we have all of our little safety checks in for our stamina system, and it is working great. So yeah, that's basically it, guys. I hope that this tutorial has been useful for your project. If you have any questions, make sure to comment them down in the comment section below. If you think that I missed anything, or there's something that isn't working, please make sure to comment that as well, and I'll make sure to have a pinned comment just showing any fixes or possible fixes. But as you can see here in the video, it works quite well. Hopefully we won't need that. Anyway, I've been Andrew for Aurora Gameworks. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more tutorials like this, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.